What's up guys, this is Post-Production Pie with SLRLounge.com and welcome to another weekly Lightroom 4 edit featuring the Lightroom 4 preset system. Now just like with all of our edits, we're going to work through this image first with the Lightroom 4 preset system, and then we're going to show you guys exactly how it's working. One, so you can better understand the preset system, and two, in case you don't have the preset system, you can benefit as well by seeing exactly how we're going to process this image. So let's get started. This image was actually shot a little while back when we kind of first entered into the realm of professional wedding photography. And as you can see in the name up here, this is from Justin and Yvette's wedding. And for those of you that don't know, Justin is my business partner. Him, along with his little brother Chris, and we started Linen Jersey Photography and then SLR Lounge. So he's one of the co-founders of SLR Lounge. And I thought, why not use this image for this tutorial? We can add a little embarrassing commentary and everything. It's kind of a great image because Justin's a very handsome looking Asian man, and he gets compliments on that all the time, and I think it goes to his head. So when you guys see him, you can tease him about that, and he probably won't even know where it's coming from because I don't think he watches these videos anyway. So all right, let's get started guys. What we're gonna do is let's go over first how this was shot. Now this was shot, I believe, on a Canon 40D. It was taken quite a while back, and it was shot at 1/60 of a second, f2.8 at ISO 800 at 70 millimeters on a 28-75 lens. And this, I believe, was our Tamron lens. Again, this was shot a while back, and we didn't have all the equipment that we do today. We kind of worked into it like everybody does. So what we're using here is we have primarily just window light coming from the left, and based on the mixed lighting in this room, I have a little bit of yellow on his forehead and stuff like that. I kind of know, I actually knew when I shot this that I was probably going to turn this into a black and white image. We have a very classic look with Justin and his pose and everything. It'll work really well with a black and white. Not my best image, but not my worst either. And it features Justin, and he kind of makes up for his good looks, you know? So it's all right. All right, so let's start off, and the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into base adjustments. I know a lot of you guys have been asking us to use the advanced dust correction curve a bit more to show you how it's done, and this is what I do. Anytime I'm producing an image for print or for canvas, the first thing I apply is this advanced dust correction curve preset. Now I know based on this image it's not gonna have a lot of dust just because of the way it's shot and the aperture and everything like that, it's not gonna be noticeable. But if we did have dust, it would be picked up right in this little curve. And what this curve does is you can essentially see, and you can pause the video and dial it in on your own if you don't have the presets. It just sets this super wonky curve where it goes up and down. It allows us to see basically these contrast points so we can see little flecks of dust if there were to be any. We can even see little bits of dandruff and stuff like that, and it's really helpful on guys when you're shooting guys' portraits and they're, you know, say they have their suit on, the suit's dark, you can identify any light skin over that, you know, collar and everything like that, so you can fix those types of things quickly. All right, so if we did have dust, what I would do is I'd zoom in, I'd select my little dust removal tool, and then we just go and click on the object and we'd heal it out. All right, so that's what we do. When we're done, all I would do is just go and reset the curve back to normal, and this is just going to reset the curve. It's not going to reset the actual dust removal that we applied, so you can see that the spot removal is still there. All right, so this is fine the way it is. What we're gonna do, go up to the top, and like I said, we wanna produce this as a black and white image. We have the perfect preset already available for us, and I'm just gonna hit I because the information's kind of bugging me now. So let's hit I to remove the information, and we have the soft portrait standard black and white preset. This is designed specifically for this look. It's designed for kind of portraits. We want a softer look, and this is our standard black and white that's gonna give us a good amount of contrast, so I'm gonna apply that now. Now what this has basically done is it's added a bit of contrast. We've pulled down highlights and whites a bit just to kind of flatten out the highlights on the skin. We've raised the shadows and the blacks to do the same thing. We want to flatten out highlights and shadows just to give us a more flattering and even look over skin tones. Now, of course, because we're doing that, we're also adding a contrast boosting curve to kind of modify. If we didn't have this curve, it's going to end up being too flat. You can see that we don't have enough contrast right now. So we're adding the curve in addition to a little contrast boost to make up for that, basically compensation for the highlight adjustment that we did up here. Well, highlight and shadow adjustment. All right, so let's keep going down. All we have in addition to that, we don't have any split toning or anything like that applied, but we do have a bit of unique detail settings applied. We have our standard sharpening settings, which is 71.5 and 10 with 30 masking just to smooth out and reduce the overall sharpening effect a bit. We've also added a bit of noise reduction because we're dealing with portraits, and we don't have to worry with portraits. We want to reduce a little bit of that detail just because we don't need to see all the crazy fine pores and everything. And this image was actually shot at 800 ISO, I believe, so that's great because it's going to actually correct for a little bit of the noise and grain. Once again, after we apply this preset, I always zoom in, just make sure my details are good. You know, we still have good detail in the hair. If we take noise reduction up too high, we start to kill our hair detail. So leave it where the preset kind of defaults it at. It'll be nice and it'll have a good amount of detail still while not having too much grain and not killing too much basically of like the facial detail and everything like that. All right, now as far as lens corrections, we have a standard amount of lens vignetting of +30 and 30, and that's basically everything that we've done in this standard black and white preset. But from here, I want to make a few adjustments. So what I'm going to do is go to my base adjustments, and I'd like to add just a bit more blacks, and maybe even, we'll see if we need to boost contrast. But the main thing I want to do is just add some more blacks. So we're going to go down to our blacks. I'm just going to do a medium darken, just to pull it down a bit more, and it looks fine right there. You know, a lot of people always go, oh, you don't want to have any blacks clipped. Well, that's not necessarily true. When I print an image, I want to make sure I have some true highlights and some true blacks. Some areas where we have basically all the detail lost in the highlight, all the detail lost in the blacks, or at least very close to it, because that's what's giving us the sense of contrast. Now, if I hit J to bring up our highlight and shadow alert, then basically we can see that we're clipping a little bit of detail in the suit, and then also just on the right side of the hair. But again, we're clipping detail in the shadow areas of the shot. I mean, look, this is where the shadows are falling. This is where we should see some deeper blacks, basically. I'm not worried about losing any of that detail. If you are worried about that, you can always pull it up just a bit. And if you raise it to about +20, raise the shadows just a tiny bit, you'll pull out some of that, you know, detail that you've lost. But again, I kind of like it just a little bit more contrasty. That's a preference of mine. You guys can make your own call on that. I'm going to hit J to turn off my little alert right there. Now that's basically it as far as the overall basic production for this high contrast version of the image. But let's say, you know, a lot of times I like to create a nice film look. This is a really classic looking image. It works perfect with kind of a black and white film look. I'm going to show you guys how easy that is with the preset system. So the first thing I'm going to do is hit Control' to create a virtual copy so we can have both. And what we're going to do is go and modify the curve. This is the greatest thing about the preset system is we've designed it around this kind of stackable method of basically layering your effects so you can change one thing and it's not going to change everything in that overall preset. So again, I'm going to pull down my antique curves. Right now, the curve that it's using for that standard black and white is this neutral punch black and white right here. So if I select this, nothing's going to happen because that's the curve that's actually being used. But what if I want to get a little bit of a fade to it? Well, I can apply a bright wash, neutral wash, just depending on how much fade I want. If I want contrast in my fade, I can add a vintage punch, which is going to just kind of clip shadows and highlights a bit while keeping additional contrast. So let's flip through these real quick and you can see exactly what it's going to do. Bright wash is going to keep everything, just adjust that curve. So let's pull up the curve so you guys can see exactly how it's modifying it. With a neutral wash, again, we're just modifying the curve, so now we have more, it's not going to be brightened, it's just going to be washed out in our image. Now what I think I want with this is just going to be a vintage punch, where we're basically clipping some of our shadow detail, some of our highlight detail, but retaining overall contrast. So let's apply that, and that's great. I love it. But the only thing is that because we've modified the blacks so much is that I have a little bit too much of my blacks clipped. So what I'm going to do is just go back to my base adjustments and then modify the blacks. Just by going, probably I can reset it or just go standard, zero it out is going to be fine. So we can do, let's see, you know, neutral, reset, and standard, both of those are going to work just fine. I'll probably just go with the zeroed out. So we get this nice faded look to the image. You can see in the histogram that we've clipped our detail in the blacks, we've clipped the detail in the shadows and basically pulled it in, and that's what gives us that subtle fade while also retaining our contrast. Now if we want to tweak contrast from here, we can always pull it up and down or just go to contrast and we can hit click reset, or we can even do a light fade to further fade out the contrast. But I kind of like it at the light boost just to kind of keep a little bit of that contrast level. Now last thing I'm going to do is go down to my effects, and we're going to add a little bit of film grain to it. So I'm just going to go to film grain, click medium. And again, that's the nice part, is that we're adding and we're stacking these layers. And that's kind of how we design the whole system, is so that you can stack and kind of turn Lightroom into sort of a layer-based system like Photoshop, but kind of a faux layer-based system, because it's not truly layer-based. It's just the way that it's designed in the preset system gives you that kind of feel and control. All right, so let's shrink down the film strip so we can see this a little bit bigger. And let's just go to each version of the image. And if we wanted to, we could also pull in a light vignette. I don't want to use any artistic vignetting action. I'm just going to my base adjustments and pull down just a standard light vignette just to kind of darken the top and bottom of the image slightly. All right, so that's great right there. Let's go over the final settings for this image. Basically what we've done is we've modified our tone curve, so you can see that curve has created that clip shadows, clip highlight look in this curve. That gives us that vintage punch. We've adjusted exposure down with this setting, and we've also left contrast at 25. Everything else, well, actually we modified our shadows and blacks too by raising them so we didn't clip too much. If we pull this down, we end up clipping too much of the shadow detail. And if that's kind of the look that you're going for, there's nothing wrong with that either. It doesn't look bad at -20 either. So we just left it here for now. Clarity is the same, sharpening and noise reduction is all the same. If we wanted, we can modify noise reduction because we are adding grain, so it doesn't really matter that we're reducing noise. But we're also adding grain in our effects, and that's what that grain preset did. So we added 60, size of 30, and roughness of 40, and that gives us that nice film look. We also pulled in a little bit more of a vignette just to strengthen the darkening on the bottom and the top of the image, but look at how natural it still looks. We still have good edge-to-edge tones, and you can't tell that it's vignetted, as if I were to pull it in. If I pulled it in so it was kind of too powerful, you'd see this darkening happening, and it kind of looked just very unnatural, like we added the actual vignette. All right, last thing I might do is just tweak the exposure a tiny bit just to pull it down just a little. And it looks great right there. So let's take a look at both versions of the image. So here was the high contrast standard version. Here's our original image. If I hit backslash, we can see the original. So there's the before, here's the after, and here is that black and white film look with just a couple additional clicks from where we were. Now if we click backslash from here, we're going to actually see the preview from the virtual copy. Because we base this on the virtual copy, it actually shows us the before version of this image is that virtual copy. So there's the virtual, and with a few clicks later, we got to our nice kind of film faded black and white look with a little bit of grain. All right, that's it for this tutorial, guys. Hope you all enjoyed, and we'll see you guys in the next video.